Sup everyone, J-Bone back here for Smash This Podcast going live. I rarely go live anymore. Usually I just do all my editing shit and put vids out with intros and all that. And tonight I'm not wasting any time with that. I got all my notes here and I just got done watching some stuff on the WWE Network post Raw. And I like doing these reviews for Bring It to the Table just because it's something original on the network and that I've noticed that not a lot of people talk about. And it's actually one of the few things on my channel that actually happens to get a few more views than other things. So please don't take that as bragging. I'm just saying it's one of the things that motivates me to keep doing this. It's like, oh, well, this video did well as opposed to maybe something else. Maybe I won't do that. I'll keep doing this. And this happens to be one of them. Hey, you behave yourself. I'm doing a vid. Cat runs away. All right. So WWE special, Bring It to the Table. This is episode number 6. And this one actually has a title called Brock Lesnar's Future. And that's kind of what they start out the show with. The start of the show is really weird. It's JBL walking into a conversation, and I'd have to go back and watch and see what the content of the conversation is. They're just mumbling about something. Peter Rosenberg and Corey Graves. JBL walks in. They both look at JBL. He's about to sit down, turns around, and starts grabbing all of JR's, it's like his stuff's in the background, WWE related things. There's a Slammy, and in front of the Slammy is a bunch of JR's sauces that he sells on the WWE, WWEshot.com, or promotes on his own website, because he's still associated with the WWE. JBL takes all the sauces, throws them in the trash, and that's how the show starts. And it's like, what the hell is going on? And then they do the opening credits, whatever, the opening title screen. And then he explains that it's a friendly rivalry going on between he and JR because of the Oklahoma City and Texas rivalry, which obviously that's got to be some kind of college rivalry. I don't watch a lot of college ball unless it's Wisconsin related stuff. I just don't watch that much of it. Some people watch that even more than NFL stuff. So I'm assuming that's what it's about. So, maybe they're kicking off the NCAA rivalry early. I don't know. Whatever. It was just comical. It's like, whoa, what's up with JBL? Why is he doing this? The consummate heel that everybody loves talking about. The Ramblers and I have had some conversations about JBL as well, but I'm not going to get into that. We'll stick to the topic here, and that's reviewing Bring It to the Table episode number 6. So they get into the show. They start out with a hot start talking about Lesnar versus Jones, the potential of a fight between them. And it's interesting that they bring up these topics. They see that the fans are talking about it, and they know they know they're hot topics, so they bring out people from the company to actually discuss them, which is kind of, I still think that this show is kind of weird, but in a good way, not in a negative way. It's like, hey, we were just talking about that on the podcast. So it's not like, oh, they're watching our podcast. No, they just know that a lot of people are talking about a subject, and so they bring it up with two color guys from WWE. I personally, and I'll probably discuss this more with the Ramblers come Wednesday night when we do the sidebar. But as far as the potential for a UFC fight between Lesnar and Jones, and I don't know anything really about Jones other than he's one of their more popular guys, more successful guys, I guess. Lesnar, obviously, he is who he is. I could care less if Lesnar has another fight in the UFC. I'm just not that big of a UFC fan. I'd be more concerned to see CM Punk in a fight, honestly. But but then the discussion comes up, if Lesnar's going to stick around or not. Is he going to leave for a while, have this fight, come back? What's he going to do? What else they talk about? They talked about Sasha Banks and Alexa Bliss, and that their feud is actually fueled by real heat with each other, which is interesting. There is rivalries you see, stemming from things going on in the locker room. They just don't get along, whatever. And then you see the two in the ring, and it seems a little more, for lack of better words, real. Like you can see the discontent in them. They don't want to be around each other, but they still work together. They mentioned, what did they mention? Oh, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels being one of those real heat, that they genuinely did not like each other in the locker room. So the rivalry that they had in the ring, even though it was on TV, was also real at the same time. Peter Rosenberg saying that he wanted to see Sasha Banks versus Alexa Bliss, saying that was a money fight, and he wanted to see it on SummerSlam. So that was kind of interesting. They go from that talking about Talking Smack being canceled. JBL bringing up the opinion that they actually need shows like that for their workers. So that was actually nice to hear. I don't agree a lot with JBL's stuff all the time, but I will absolutely agree with him there. I think it is very important, like you said, to have another show like that gives these people a less scripted outlet to work on their characters and to just put stuff out there. You throw something out there and see if people check it out, see if people respond to it. And Corey Graves brought up the fact that thought it was kind of doomed from the start, especially after 205 started, saying that it was, people had to sit through 2 hours of SmackDown, 1 hour of 205 live, and then watch Talking Smack, and then that hurt it. Well, I didn't always watch Talking Smack live, but I usually watched it every single week. If I missed it, I would certainly hear about it on social media saying, oh, for example, the hot stuff going on between Miz and Daniel Bryan. That is some of the craziest stuff that show, showed us, that was out there on that show. And that, if I didn't watch it live, I certainly heard about it, and it made me want to watch it, later on. So, talked about that. So it's going to be interesting. It's like stuff gets canceled. It's going to be interesting to see if there's enough fan support behind it to bring it back, in one way or another. And JBL said that, it's still around. It's going to be after pay-per-views, but, it's still, I think it's still an important tool for the performers to use it on a weekly basis. You know, it gives everyone a chance here and there to, you know, to see a new guy like Baron Corbin show off his, you know, his talents on the mic, to expand on his character, and then to see a veteran like John Cena come out and have a serious conversation, or like the last show that was on there, he was very comical, you know. So either way, you know, it's a positive. And then they had a little break, come back talking about upcoming stuff on the network, and they were talking about the Mae Young Classic. And this was very interesting because they actually put some they put some spoilers out there about a confrontation that happened. And if you don't want to know, then, you know, obviously, you know, you can skip ahead on this segment. But if you're on social media, you already know what happened. I did my best to stay away myself from spoilers, but, you know, obviously they introduced everyone, so we got that much. But then as far as, you know, certain people doing certain moves in the ring, we saw little videos here and there. What else? Oh, and then, of course, the segment that they're talking about here, Ronda Rousey being present for the Mae Young Classic with some of her MMA friends, supporting Shauna, what's her name? Blazer? Blazer? I'm probably mispronouncing it, so I apologize. But nonetheless, someone who came from MMA and is now doing professional wrestling and is a part of the Mae Young Classic. And that there was a confrontation between Ronda's girls and WWE's horsewomen, Charlotte. I think 3 out of the 4 were there. I don't know if all 4 were there, but it was like Charlotte, Banks, Bayley, and Lynch. 3 out of the 4 of those, saying that there was some kind of confrontation. And obviously that's smart to do that. It creates a buzz. If, you know, if people hear that, they go, oh, I want to see that. Well, then, okay, that's X amount more people that are interested in seeing it. Obviously, you know, I have my favorites who I'm looking forward to seeing in this, like Viper from the UK, Tessa Blanchard. I think I heard Santana Garrett's in it. I watched the intro of the 32 women, but I can't remember all of them. Toni Storm's part of it. I'm looking forward to her. But Shauna, who I mentioned. So yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see the Mae Young Classic when it hits the WWE Network August 28th. Not sure how many parts it is, but nonetheless. All right, it goes from there to kind of sidetrack into another MMA-related discussion, talking about Chris Cyborg, who is also part of the UFC, having some kind of Twitter warfare with Becky Lynch, which I really have not paid attention to. Excuse me. But apparently they're challenging each other, in social media, which I've heard of Chris Cyborg and how tough she is, genuinely a good fighter. But it's another one of those things where, Sheamus is on Twitter going back and forth with Conor McGregor. It's like, are we ever actually going to see something like that? No, probably not. Would I want to see a Chris Cyborg Becky Lynch fight? Honestly, no, probably not. Becky Lynch is a great in-ring performer. But then it feels like you'd have to really change Chris Cyborg for what she painstakingly does to prepare herself for these fights, which I've seen a few videos, and it's intense stuff. And then put her in a professional wrestling ring. It'd be night and day difference for her. You know, it's, I don't know. Some people I'm sure would want to see it. I'm really not interested. But so that was kind of interesting. All these social media wars that they're talking about. It's funny. Like if you're not on Twitter, you're really missing out. And I've missed most of this stuff. But you know, hearing about it on this show is interesting nonetheless. The last one is kind of the most interesting. But next, they were talking about the WWE Book of Rules and like point words that are used too often on WWE programming. The example that they used, which was genuinely funny, and I didn't know this. I'd have to go back and see this, but they talked about, you know, you could conjure this into like a drinking game. The use of the word structure used over 60 times in the Jinder Mahal Randy Orton Punjabi prison match at the last pay-per-view. And they looked at Peter Rosenberg inquisitively like, what are you talking about? And then they actually played back all the times they said structure on commentary, no matter who said it, during this match. And it was, what they say, the total count was 64. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And I compare that to, and I've joked about this on Twitter before myself, when, you know, Roman Reigns is being talked about, and they constantly say big dog. You know, BIGDAWG, big dog. Purposely misspell it, you know, just to put my point out there, because that's how they say it, big dog, you know. And I cracked the joke saying, you know, all right, you know, let's play the drinking game. Every time they say big dog on Raw, take a shot. There was, no lie, there was one time, somewhere within the last month, it was about a month ago or so, month or two, Roman Reigns opened the show, and just in the time that they were introducing him and he was coming down to the ring, before Roman even said anything, they said big dog like 5 or 6 times within the first 5 minutes of the show. And it's like, psh, you're already drunk. Can't even watch Raw. You just fell asleep within the first 15 minutes because you're drunk from big dog comments. You know, stuff like that. I just think is absolutely hilarious. So, love you, Roman. It's just too damn funny. So yeah. The question was, you know, are you told to say certain words to promote something or to put something out there, you know, punctuate it? And of course, you know, Corey Graves and JBL were emphatic about, well, JBL was like, what, do you think we're a puppet? You know, so it's like, he just instantly went, you know, mega heel on it, which was hilarious. It's like, okay. It's like, yeah, don't lie. You're full of shit if you're not, really. It's like, so yeah, they were like, no, but we know better. All right. And this next segment was very interesting. They talked about Enzo Amore heat. And we've seen some articles about that recently, and actually brought up a moment. Like, I saw this, where did I see it? Probably ringsidenews.com. Shout out to Steve. Talking about how Enzo was like thrown off a bus or something, and then, you know, they proceeded to actually ask them, what's up with Enzo? Is there actually heat on Enzo? And apparently there is. And that's, I was completely floored that they brought that up on this show. They actually how do I say this? They went from having him in the main event on Raw with Cass versus Big Show to burying, and I'll say burying him, that might be a little harsh, but just the fact that they were talking about the heat on him, I think is a way of burying him on Bring It to the Table. I was completely amazed. And then, going on to ask, oh, what don't you like about him? And then Corey Graves actually said, saying, when you, like, okay, we see Enzo come out, strut his stuff, he's obnoxious, cuts his promos. He said that Enzo is like this 24/7, which, I think I've heard things like that before, which was a little surprising, not very, because I did hear about that article about him getting thrown off a bus or getting into a fight or something. Well, okay, well, now I guess we know why. Apparently, he's rubbing people the wrong way. And then it switched from, okay, what's wrong with Enzo to what should happen to Enzo. And then I was like, oh, okay, I have my popcorn, I'm ready. Proceed. What do you think should happen to Enzo? And I'm expecting fire him, but they were not that mean. They said, they brought up the fact that they think that, which I've said on this channel, no, I'm not taking credit for it, I'm just saying, they said put him and Kalisto, they brought up Kalisto on 205 Live. Hey, it makes sense, End this feud. You're splitting up Big Cass and Enzo. What else are you gonna do with? And no offense to Enzo, but he's a smaller guy. He is a cruiserweight. So, yeah, if you're trying to switch up things, if you're trying to get more people to watch 205 Live, put guys like Enzo Amore, who is very popular, whether you like him or not, he gets an immediate response the second he's out there, similar to Roman Reigns. He walks out, people boo the shit out of him. Enzo comes out, people go, yay, it's Enzo, and they do the whole SAWFT soft thing, so if the crowd was dead silent, you'd know something was wrong. It'd be like, okay, time to get rid of him, time to switch it over. But no, Enzo is mega popular. And if you're trying to save 205 Live, bring more eyes to it, like they said, put Enzo on 205 Live with Kalisto, and even like I've said in the past, put James Ellsworth on there. Don't bring him back to SmackDown Live, So, yeah, very interesting part. I'd say this is about the most interesting part of the show, is them talking about the real heat that Enzo Amore has. That was very surprising. Then they went to talking about Jason Jordan and how the whole coming out, the big surprise of Kurt Angle. The big reveal, okay? And I don't need to, you watch WWE stuff, you know what it was. But the main question that they had was, what's the ceiling for Jason Jordan? What kind of potential, what do you see him accomplishing? Now that he's split up from Chad Gable and he's aligned with Kurt Angle and he's a new solo guy. And JBL said he has unlimited potential. And he also said that Gable has the same. And I believe that, you know. Hell, whether you like him or not, look at what they did with Jinder. No one saw that coming. That's amazing, in my opinion. You know, you can disagree with me. That's fine. You know, and I'm not saying Jinder is one of my favorite guys. I'm just saying that they took a guy like him, you know, whether if it's for the promotion of business in India or whatever, that they took a guy like him, put their money on him, gave him a chance, and they're running with it. And I think that's great. They're really, you know, you shake things up. And the WWE gets so complacent that you need to do shit like that once in a while. I'm a firm believer in that, you know. It's like you got to throw a curve in there. Hey, yeah, like tonight, you know. No one was expecting Lesnar. Boom, Lesnar comes out. Well, all right, that's interesting, you know. Wakes people up a little. So JBL said unlimited potential. Same about Chad Gable. Graves said future world champ. Anything less than that is going to be an absolute shame. Very interesting. I could see it. I saw a lot of different opinions on Jason Jordan tonight. In the Miz segment. Number one, I made a comment on Twitter about his entrance music. I said it looked like it was made with kazoos. And then someone replied, yes, and this is a sign that Edge and Christian are coming back. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious. It's true. Like I responded. Sorry, I'm drinking so much. It's like freaking hot in here. I don't know why. I need a fan on. I should have put a fan on before I started this. I'm almost done. So yeah, Graves said future world champ. And then the last thing, they had a break, and then they did it's timed segment, which is really similar to what they've done before. It was kind of a real quick point by point segment. They just kind of gave it a new name, which is like, whatever. Okay. Same thing, different color. And asking them, you know, do they agree? Do they disagree? The first one was save it for the pay-per-view. About matches being too good for the weekly show. They should have saved it for pay-per-view. For example, like Nakamura and Cena that's happening this coming evening. You know, that should have been saved for a pay-per-view. Well, that's freaking awesome. It's a great match. You know, look, we had on Raw tonight, we had Strowman versus Reigns versus Joe. Someone called that a pay-per-view match. So yeah, it's, you know, so sometimes it's like, oh, you wasted it. But no, sometimes you do have to put good matches on a regular show. You want viewers, you know, you want people to be interested. You can't have Braun Strowman versus James Ellsworth every show. You know, you've got to give them some competition, you know. And so JBL didn't agree, and neither did Graves. Basically saying, no, just keep doing what they're doing. Sometimes you have to throw good matches on the weekly shows. Wrestling podcasts. Graves said, it sounded like he kind of agreed with the question, are there too many wrestling podcasts? No, and I personally think there should be more. You know, it's a great way for people to get their opinions on there, you know. And I try to, you know, if you follow me, I'll follow you back, you know, or I'll check out your stuff on YouTube, you know. And, you know, I've seen that. It's like we're all one big podcasting family, you know. So, you know, whatever I don't have the time to watch everything, but I'll, if you message me, I'll try to respond in kind if I have time. What JBL said, didn't really agree or disagree. He said he likes Bruce Pritchard's podcast, which is interesting only in a sense that Bruce Pritchard is on the Global Force Wrestling. He's on their roster. He's one of their writers, producers, whatever you want to call them. I think some of those guys have multiple hats that they wear in Global Force Wrestling. So it was just interesting that he mentioned his name. I have not listened to Bruce Pritchard's show, but then they brought up the fact that JBL is still close with Bruce Pritchard and that they have been friends for a long time. And they showed a picture of JBL with Bruce Pritchard on the back of a little white scooter while playing the new music for the Maria and Mike Kanellis, The Power of Love song. It was scary, absolutely scary, but hilarious. Next thing they talked about, they brought up the Shield reunion, which I also have talked about on here, and with the Ramblers on occasion. JBL said no. Graves said yes. One interesting thing that JBL said right at the end of that particular conversation was that Reigns never made them a dime while he was in the Shield. That's very interesting. He's one of their top guys now. And I don't know. It was just weird hearing him say that. Oh, the question was also brought up, would fans treat Reigns different if there was a Shield reunion? Would they cheer him as opposed to booing him? So, I don't know. That's a great question. That really is, to have those guys come out again. And if they do, I think it would be a short-lived thing. It's not something that they could necessarily run with for a very long time. It would have to be, okay, give them a couple rivalries on Raw and then shake things up and throw all the Shield guys over on SmackDown. Something like that. That's just off the top of my head. But it was interesting that they brought that up. So yeah, one said no, one said yes. And then the big finish, and this is something that some of my fellow Ramblers were talking about recently. Bringing it up. We were contemplating bringing this up as a topic at one of our last wrestling news shows, at the Rambling About Wrestling, the Sidebar show. Max had brought this up and said, yeah, we should talk about the John Cena Roman Reigns Twitter battle. And I just kind of shook my head like, what? And now they actually, I had no clue what he was talking about. So I just kind of brushed it off and I'm like, no, we should talk about this, this, and this. Now I know what Max was talking about. They brought up the fact that after Battleground, Roman Reigns complained about the lackluster crowd in, was it Philadelphia, I think. Nonetheless, it was Philly. And saying, if we come back, you guys better bring it, And then John Cena replied to him, which was kind of weird. It seemed like out of place when they showed the tweet, kind of out of the blue, like, oh, if you want to fight, you know where to come get it. It was really weird. It was awkward when they were talking about it. The fact that, you know, Reigns commented on a SmackDown show, and then John Cena retorted with, oh yeah, well, blah, 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 blah. And then Reigns, you know, retorts, oh yeah, well, blah, 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 blah. And to sum it up, you know, it's to me, it didn't make sense that they were going back and forth. What they then mentioned was kind of interesting. They said that could this lead to them facing off one-on-one in the ring at WrestleMania? Which is interesting, but if a war is going to start on Twitter with a couple little jabs back and forth and then lead to something, you know, 3/4 of a year later, it's like, I don't know. That's just a really awkward way to do it, in my opinion. I don't see saying that, you know, that match should headline next WrestleMania. Okay. If it's promoted if it's booked, if the feud is booked properly, well, first of all, they both have to be in the same show. So somewhere over the course of the next year, there has to be a shakeup where they end up on the same show. Which means you bring Cena to Raw, or wait, isn't Cena's a free agent? He can go wherever he wants, right? Didn't they mention that before? They've talked about that a little. Free agent John Cena. Where will he show up? Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But that would obviously that would make sense if they're, oh, remember when we said he was a free agent? Oh, okay. And then he shows up on Raw, starts a fight with Roman because you hurt my feelings on social media. I don't know. But nonetheless, that was their big finish talking about that. You know, do you want to see the match? Sure. But it's got to have a better start than this. It can't be, well, you replied harshly to my tweet. That's such a sad start to a feud for your two top guys in the company. Oh, and then they talked about for a minute who's the bigger guy in the company. And right now, they commented that Roman Reigns is the guy who's there day in and day out, whereas John Cena isn't. And that's another interesting argument, you know. If they have a headlining match and, you know, say John Cena loses, which he does on occasion at WrestleMania, would it be his way of passing the torch to Roman Reigns, as in, this is the new top guy? If you weren't sure about it, now you know. So, whatever. It is what it is. Like I said, they got to start it better than this, though, instead of you hurt my feelings on Twitter. But maybe that is the start of it. Who knows? So that's my thoughts on the show. Pretty good show. You know, some comical points. You know, some people don't like this type of show on the network. I actually do, because you know, and I've said this before, you know, they're talking about the fans of professional wrestling, which is interesting. Sometimes they are kind to us and talk about what we talk about, and sometimes they are not so kind to us, and they complain about we talk about it too much, or we complain about this, we complain about that. we're fans. That's what we do. You know, I do my best not to troll shit out there, you know, because God knows I don't like trolls either. But I love discussing stuff with fans because I love professional wrestling. And obviously you do too if you're watching this. So I thank you for watching this, my review of Bring It to the Table, episode number 6, Brock Lesnar's Future from the WWE Network. So yeah, if you like what you see here, give it a like, give the channel a sub, share it with your mom, your uncle, your neighbor's dog. Yeah, maybe not your neighbor's dog. That's a little weird. But hey, you know, pets like wrestling. My cats sit there and watch wrestling with me all the time. So don't tell me that pets don't like wrestling. So yeah, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you down the road for the next one. Good night.